Well, good morning again. Welcome to our parallel session, which is devoted to complexity and simplicity in managing a digital enterprise. By the way, this session is the one which is being transmitted through live stream, so we can hope to have a few people watching it either now or when it is transferred again in a delayed way. By the way, when I proposed and discussed with Richard to have a session on that, little did I realize that technology would be pretty much at the heart of the discussions we had, notably yesterday. So that, in effect, one can fear a certain level of redundancy between what was discussed in the plenary and in some of the parallel sessions yesterday, and our topic. So in order to avoid duplication, we are going to focus on this real subject, how to manage the digital enterprise. The first thing to discuss might well be, what is a digital enterprise? Because if we don't know what it is, how could we discuss the way to manage it? And there are as many definitions of the digital enterprise as there are people talking about it, maybe even more. Some people have multiple definitions. Personally, I like the simplest definition possible in order to avoid complexity, obviously. And the simplest definition is to compare or to make a strong parallel between us as digitally enabled people and workers and the digital enterprise. So when you look at what we have become in the last 3 or 4 years, one can say that we are so much better informed about everything. We have access to all kinds of information. And the parallel with the enterprise is that it becomes much more intelligent. It has a better grasp and access to its own data, a lot of access to data from outside the enterprise, and then the capability to, through analytics, to extract from all of that data the intelligence needed in order to operate and run the digital enterprise. Second thing we have become is social. If we like it or not, we have all become somewhat social as a minimum. And for the digital enterprise, that means that it is related to the world in a very different way, related to its customers and clients very closely, related to its partners differently, and related even to the world of things. When a product is now leaving a company, it's equipped with some sensors and some ways of communicating back, then the products of the company are becoming a relation of the company for the duration of the life of these products. Third, we have become mobile, and for the enterprise it means being adaptive, with adaptive processes, with adaptive people. Fourth, we are, if we like it or not again, always on. Always reachable, always connected, always in relation with others. And for the company, the digital enterprise, that means that the traditional slow processes of the digital enterprise are massively accelerated. And in fact, the digital enterprise lives according to a prestissimo rhythm, as opposed to the, cadenzas of classical enterprise, which are much, much, much slower. And finally, we have changed our ways of working quite radically in the last few years. And the digital enterprise is marked by its new business models. For example, if you take a manufacturer of toothbrushes, they did sell toothbrushes, had maybe some maintenance, maybe some service, maybe some supply of the renewables, the little brushes or whatever. That was in the good old time. The business model was, I sell a brush, I get some money, and I try to make a profit out of it. Now, when you think that this digital toothbrush is going to send data to the user, to the dentist community, to the development organization of the manufacturer, is going to send constantly lots of data, one can well imagine that the manufacturer of toothbrushes will provide something like a dental service to the many users of the toothbrush, ensuring a revenue flow which is continuous and in line with the constant connection between the toothbrush, its user, and the company which produced it. So let's adopt, if you don't mind, as the definition of what a digital enterprise is, this notion that it's intelligent, related differently, adaptive, works prestissimo, and that it is using new business models to make money. And let's discuss how we can manage them. And in that respect, we are going to divide our time into two parts, two halves. The first one, we are going to devote it to complexity and try to understand in which ways technology contributes to complexity, creates complexity, and therefore probably makes it more difficult to manage the digital enterprise. And then in the second half, we are going to discuss how technology can generate simplicity and therefore facilitate the management of the digital enterprise. To do that, we have a panel which couldn't be anything else but distinguished, because that's what panels are. And from the closest to the furthest away, we have Ron Tolido. Ron Tolido is a well-known, not to say famous, colleague of mine in Capgemini. He's a chief technology officer. And he and I have been working now for years trying to understand the development of technology and its impact on the business, which now kind of converges into the digital enterprise. Then we have Isabella, who is, has a double hat in her company, NetHotels, where she is the CEO and at the same time the CIO. By the way, she was the top CIO of 2013 in Austria, and therefore ideally placed to talk about technology from the point of view of the provider of technology as CIO and the user at the top as the CEO of her organization. And then we have Professor Franz Wotawa. He is the Dean of the Faculty of Computer Sciences at the Graz University of Technology. And, you know, the academic point of view, the research point of view, with two major fields of expertise of Professor Wotawa, the testing, which is a very technical field, obviously, but also artificial intelligence. And, you know, how can we maybe derive some benefits from it to have simpler enterprises to manage? In both halves of our session, Ron is going to give us a little impression of what technology evolution brings us, first in terms of complexity, second in terms of simplicity. Then we'll have contributions by Isabella and Franz. Then, of course, discussions with the audience, and then move to simplicity with the same scheme. So, Ron, can you start us off on complexity, please? Of course.
Thank you very much. Very nice to have you all in the room over here, including the live stream. Hi, Mom. Very nice opportunity to address you just in a few minutes a little bit about what's currently happening in technology. I'm a firm believer of the idea that we're always involved in a cat and mouse game, if you like, within technology between what's complex and what's simple. And let's be very honest about this, and what we will see in the forthcoming hour as well, that often the complexity that we are battling is caused by technology, and on the other hand, the solution is often in technology itself as well. It's a bit of a yin and yang thing, if you like. They are counter forces that cannot be without each other on the other hand. I have a friend of mine who works for, I won't mention his name, but his first name is Paul, and he works for an organization that I also will not mention, but they have a three-letter acronym, and that they're quite internationally oriented, let me put it this way. And he works for that company, an IT company, and he's a so-called Java troubleshooter. And this is a very interesting role. For those of you that don't know, Java is a very popular programming language. So many software engineers that create solutions nowadays use Java. But Java is also an extremely powerful, but with that also very complex programming language. And it seduces you to try out things and make constructions that are challenging, that are interesting to the analytical between us, and creates quite complex and powerful programs. But the thing is, because it can do so many different things and provides you with so many different options, it also creates a lot of problems. And he's a so-called Java troubleshooter, so he is solving the problems that they have created themselves as well, right? So you should see this, we're programming something, it becomes very complex, then we send in the troubleshooter, and he solves all of these problems, and he's proud of it as well. He's sort of a hero. Here comes the cavalry, right? But actually, in IT, we would be proud of solving problems that we have created ourselves in the first place. And he's making a splendid career out of it, by the way. He's very successful. He's traveling around the world to solve all of these problems that we have created in the first place. So that's a little bit, it's an almost cynical, ironical thing, if you like, but that's what we encounter in technology over and over again. And I'll just give you a few examples, a little bit on top of all the community technology that we've already been discussing yesterday and today, to give you some more flavor of technologies that, might complicate our life quite a lot. I was, a few weeks ago, I was at an innovation fair by BMW in Nuremberg. They do this every year. They organize an innovation fair, and they invite all of their technology partners, all of their providers, to come there and show their latest and greatest. And I had a good look, by the way, at their electronic cars, and it's completely connected. It has many chips and CPUs on board. It's a very connected thing. It's connected to the internet. And actually, if you look at it, it's more like a web server that can also bring you somewhere on 4 wheels than anything else, right? It's a very powerful, connected thing. But some of the other things I saw on that fair was, among other things, was Google Glass. So I had a good detailed look at Google Glass, played for it with something for an hour. I had done something before with it, but now I had some more opportunity to really work with the stuff. And then you find yourself with a new device that will bring a lot of questions. We've always been discussing what's the future of the phone, but maybe a phone starts to look like something, like glasses. And I felt very occupied by the technology. So I started to work with the thing, and then it needs to adjust to my voice. So there is voice control, and it didn't really understand my not entirely flawless English. So it didn't understand, and then it wasn't really well connected to my mobile phone. And then the display went on and off, and then the battery suddenly started to slow down very quickly. It was very quickly draining. And all of these things I was occupied with and trying to use the technology, and you start to realize here's technology that actually, might be quite dangerous. If I would be using this in that car and interacting with the thing, you could imagine that it's an extremely complex thing. And from a CIO perspective, from an enterprise perspective, we know that our clients and our employees and our partners will be using these type of technologies in the forthcoming years. We just don't know which one will be popular, what they will look like, and how we should accommodate them. And they will provide us with a lot of opportunities, but also a lot of them will be a failure. You tell me, by the way, a year from now, when Google Glass will be, commercially available, will it be something trendy? That if you wear it, everybody will be, it's like iPod earphones, right? Oh, well, that's somebody who's wearing a stylish design thing over here. Or if you enter the very first pub or cafe, they'll simply throw you out because you're invading their privacy. You tell me. It's very difficult right now to predict. And the complexity of it, so is not only in the use of it. Technology can absorb us, can monopolize our attention, but can also be a big problem for the enterprise because we really don't know what will be next. It's a black swan world in which these events very quickly can occur. Devices can become very quickly popular, but also can very quickly disappear again. And we simply need to accommodate that because it's our customers, it's our partners, it's our employees that are using these type of devices. Then, of course, and Pierre already mentioned this quite a lot, there's the Internet of Things. So it's not only a car, which is more like a web server, which happens to have 4 wheels. It's not only a toothbrush. Essentially, it's anything that we could equip with processors and with connectivity will be equipped, I think, with processors and connectivity very soon. It's now becoming quickly the new, let's say, object of interest within IT is the Internet of Things. And you should realize that chip manufacturers like Intel and AMD, they're not focusing at all in making chips more powerful, because we have all the processing power that we need nowadays. That's not the problem. What they are really focusing on is making very small chips that don't need any energy and also produce very little heat, so that they can build in these chips in whatever they like. It becomes an extremely connected world in which essentially everything around us, including the light bulbs over there, would be a sensor, would be essentially something that would have its own IP address and would be connected to our enterprise. And obviously, as you can imagine, that will provide us with a lot of different stimuli, information that we need to process. If you combine that with social networks, which we already have addressed a lot, so we know that a social network can be interesting because it's self-organizing and they might take some of the work out of our hands, but also, of course, there are many different communities. And again, some of these communities might be very beneficial for us to be involved in. Others may not be relevant. All of them might be a threat to us, so we need to understand all of these social communities and be involved in them in any way. So this will add quite some complexity to the CIO perspective and to ourselves as well. Also to ourselves, if we're active in social networks, it's sometimes difficult to understand what we should be part of and where we shouldn't be involved in. 16 to 20-year-old now are already massively leaving Facebook because their parents are on Facebook as well. Which of course is, you don't want that. Huh? That's absolutely horrible. And if you combine these two, it's even getting more problematic. If you realize that also things can become part of your social network, then it really starts to become spooky. General Electric, for example, they are already equipping their jet engines that they're building with what you could call a Facebook account or a Twitter account, if you like. So the jet engine that you have ordered as a company will start to tweet to you the moment it starts being produced. And you can subscribe to the updates of your engine friends somewhere there at General Electric and can follow all the updates because you might be interested in what that device is doing and how it's within its life cycle coming near to you. So you will see in the future that you will not only be able to subscribe to a social network of people, but there will also be, believe it or not, a social network of things that might be quite relevant to what you're doing. I always tell this to nerdy IT people, by the way, so, finally, guys, you will have friends as well in your social network. They are jet engines and other things, but nevertheless, right, they have a rich social network anyway, finally, after all. This, of course, will produce a lot of data, and we've heard the term big data, of course, a lot of times. We know the 3 V's probably of big data. It's a volume, it's velocity, and it's variety, so it's quite, typical for data, the amount, but also the velocity and the structure of it that we need to deal with. The thing is, of course, is that we might quickly be overwhelmed and drowning in all that different information. It's nice to have big data, but big could be good and big could be bad. Bad could be big data is going to get you. It's overwhelming. It's huge. Where should we begin? What should we do with all of that information? Even coming from social networks of things and among many other sources. So big data might be a very good thing, but let's discuss the complexity of it as well. Where to begin? What do we do with all of that information? It's a very big thing. Big often means complex. I don't like the term big data too much because it sounds too much like, something big is after you. It's coming to get you, right, if you don't watch out. So big data is clearly a complicating factor as well. And then finally, a little bit more from the perspective of the CIO. There is the application landscape as we know it. So we see all these new triggers, all these new things going to happen in devices, in channels, in social networks, in things, in big data. All of that is coming to us, but we have an existing application landscape. These are systems that we've built in decades by people that are already retired. And these are old systems based on old technology, and they capture all of our corporate knowledge, so we cannot simply throw them away. We have an existing application landscape, and we do research every now and then, and we're finding, we're right now involved in the 2014 edition of the report, that a lot of CIOs and enterprises have problems in embracing all these new technologies because they have to master the complexity of the existing systems as well. And the existing legacy, if you like, application landscape, so the IT landscape as we already have built it in the past few decades, is quickly becoming an obstacle to move further. So we have to manage the complexity of what's around us in terms of new, but also have to manage what's already inside our organization. And then, of course, there are the newcomers. You happen to know these two guys. They're quite important right now in IT. We see on the right, we see Jeff Bezos. And Jeff Bezos is the CEO of Amazon. One of the most successful retailers on the internet right now. And on the left, we see Werner Vogels, who is his CTO. And Amazon is right now particularly very successful in supplying cloud solutions, so supplying IT solutions through the internet. So they used to sell books and all the other things. Nowadays, they're also retailing IT. So you can get servers and storage and applications, all of it without having to install it, because you get it by the internet from the cloud. And they are the big players right now in the cloud. They're so successful, and they're only 6 years now in the market, that if you combine their 14 nearest competitors, combine all of their data centers, you do it times 5, it's still not as big as what Amazon currently has. So they're quite successful in this, but it's a retail thing. So at the business side, we start to realize that we can get access to these solutions from a catalog like it's a retail product. So first we'll buy a book, now we'll buy a server. Oh, we need an application, a CRM application, so we'll do that with the book as well and use the same credit card that we use to buy a book or a DVD or whatever. So this is the retailing, if you like, the retailing of IT solutions. And it means a little bit that sooner or later there is a gap between what we can do with these new technologies and what the existing landscape enables us to do. And this creates a big gap between the business and IT side. And there's one very interesting solution, namely to do both yourself. So I think it's a spectacular breakthrough to have the CIO role, so the IT role, and the CEO role, which is the business role, combined in one person. I think that's a very elegant solution, which is not always feasible, probably, but a very interesting idea. It will certainly narrow the gap between business and IT. But business is getting impatient, and so they will buy these things themselves because it's retail. They know how to get it from the internet, so if the IT department says it's impossible, we are too busy occupied by our existing landscape, they will simply buy it themselves. And you could call this, as the French call it, bricolage. Did I pronounce this right, Pierre? It's bricolage. Eh? So do it yourself. If nobody else is helping you, which is a bit of the French way of looking at things, nobody is helping us, everybody is abandoning us, why don't we do it ourselves? We will get our own solutions and leave the IT department behind. And you can imagine in terms of complexity that this will add something huge to the already big problems that we might have in the enterprise IT landscape. Because we might have the bricolage landscape, the do-it-yourself from the cloud, I'll get it myself, versus the enterprise IT landscape, which is very difficult to move because it's old-fashioned. So that's just in a few minutes, Pierre, an introduction to some of the complexity that's being created by IT. We'll be back soon on simplicity. Thank you.
Now, Isabella, tell us your point of view, please.
Most welcome. So how come the CEO and the CIO can be in one person? So we decided we have a CTO and we have a CIO. And what does the CTO do? He manages the technology, and the CIO manages the information or the innovation. So we thought it would be kind of a nice idea to combine that. In fact, the delegate of the chair decided to put in front of you an information scientist. And the information scientist behaves a little bit like your medical doctor. And you come with your enterprise and you say, pooh, it's like kind of much, it's like exhaust, you know. What is he going to do? So the general practitioner is going to look at you and say, what do we have? So here goes the lab results. The doctor is also going to explain to you how you got there, how your sickness, how your exhaust developed. So this is what we have. We have people and we have technology systems. So let me start with what the people are doing to get exhausted by information. Means I'm going to first scare you and put you into the depression, and in the second part we're going to relieve you and propose the cure, right? So first, your information habits. they will be around about suitable for the information amounts that we had 20 years ago. So we behave with information as if we had a lot less, like a fraction of what we deal with today. We increase as a society information by 2 or 2.5 every year. It's not a problem because we can employ double or times 2.5 people every year to handle all the information. So we actually solved another problem that the government colleagues discussed earlier. We solved the labor market problem as well. Easy. So we're not going to do it. We have to find a solution for that one. Next information habit that we see in the company with people, we interrupt each other. We interrupt each other every 10 minutes. So then you go and concentrate back to what you've done before, and then you will remain like something like 7 or 8 minutes to do something in a concentration mode before the next interruption will happen. And this goes on until like at 6 or 7 at night time, you will sit there and think like, I could start working now. We all know that phenomenon. We have to start dealing with that because information is just going to not stop increasing. As we heard just now. What else do we have? We generate information escalation by ourselves. Our finance minister escalates the reporting cycle. He says, quarterly reporting isn't quite sufficient. Let's do it monthly. There you go, times 3. One decision, information, times 3. Who's going to read it? Who's going to write it? Next issue, lab result. Number 4, 43% of managers in larger studies say that actually they are slowed down with their decision making by information overload. So too much information doesn't accelerate decision making. If you do it wrong, we'll come with a cure later. If you do it wrong, it's just too much, you'll be slowed down. 40% of staff accidentally use the wrong information twice a week due to information overload. It's not a good message because it's not going to stop, and if we do not manage information well using systems, likely, hopefully, we're going to drown. The doctor's recommendation or the doctor's forecast will be, are you going to what? Are you going to choke? Squeeze the air out? We're driving towards the information infarct in a company. We burn out our staff by always increasing numbers of data and information and not increasing numbers of staff. At a point, we're going to burn out. So later, how are we going to deal with that? So in fact, why did we do this? We wanted to reduce risk by increasing information, quality check, control, norms, standards, and so forth, reporting. What we in fact did, we generated more risk, less secure decision making, more mistakes. Then we handle our systems in the digital enterprise. Then the question comes, do we have the digital enterprise, or did we just convert our paper processes to digital? Our paper processes that were meant to handle the information amounts we had 20 years ago, and we kept on improving on the processes, but still we converted paper processes to digital, so we didn't win anything. We have still emails scattered across everyone's inbox. So we want to look at a project. Where do we stand? Where is the information? Oops, we don't know. It's out there. What else can we do? Okay, we can save it all. We save all these beautiful emails, and we just increase server space so we can save it and file it all. Isn't that beautiful? So my former colleague, Chief Documentation at the United Nations section, he left 30,000 pages of process documentation to the successor, CD-ROM library, elaborate documentation, beautiful. Everything was there. So the successor comes and she can read up on those 30,000 pages like quickly, you know? It would really have a value for her doing her job. Well, it won't. So what do we else do, increasing this information? we improve search, right? So filing it all and filing it more will actually make us find our stuff quicker. No, it won't. It will slow us down there as well. So what do we actually file and how do we search? At the moment, we search 1 to 1.5 hours per person and day. This is hysteric. The times that you accumulate, concentrating back on what you've done before, what I've mentioned earlier, sums up to 2.5 hours per person and per day. So imagine you come to the office at 9 o'clock and until 11:30 you do nothing. You've just concentrated back on what you've done before. Not kind of efficient, so we have to work on our information habits. Comes to the last point of the statement of the doctor in front of you. What does the CTO and the CIO actually do in the company? They deliver. Okay, we've heard we deliver whatever system the company will need. So the business units order and the IT delivers. And then what do we have? Scattered systems. We escalated to 72 applications and we're carrying on like that. So we inflate and we're not going to let go of the old systems because they worked so well, you know. We stuck with them too. So for the time being, I'm finished with the depression part. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Isabella. Now, Franz, another point of view on complexity added by technology.
Okay, so I will add basically to the talks given before. And of course, as a professor, I will make some classification schemas available and explain them using some examples. So what makes things complicated? What is complexity? That are some questions. When I was invited to this panel, first of all, it was a pleasure. The other thing, I thought, what should I talk about? So complexity is, so there are many definitions around of complexity. In computer science, we have this computational complexity, which deals with classifying problems, decision problems, basically about, first of all, can they be solved, yes or no? And if they can be solved, how much time and space, which means memory, do you need to solve these problems within a program, okay? And in a program, that's the nice thing, a program is basically nothing else than a piece of knowledge. In many cases, it's operational, because in this piece of knowledge, you exactly specify how the problem you have to solve has to be solved, okay? So that's very important. After yesterday and today, I think here complexity means more structural complexity. So you have many entities, stakeholders, for example, and relationships between them. And if the relationships are too complicated, then complexity comes up. What has this to do with technology and then, of course, digital enterprises? First of all, maybe it's an add-on to the last talk. First of all, the technology and the complexity that is there has to do also with the rules we are going to have in a certain organization, for example. One example from my university, so several years ago, I don't know exactly how long ago it was, the president decided, and of course or the accounting department decided, and of course then the president said, okay, we should have these rules about guidelines, how to use the money you have in your accounts, what can you buy from this money, what is not allowed to spend, and so on. And the funny thing is that these guidelines sum up to about 20 to 30 pages. Okay, very complicated. Every case was exactly specified in there. Finally, not even the accounting department were able to give you a good advice what you should do, especially when it was not exactly written down in that way. I guess it would be easier and much better to, let's say, specify only 1 or 2 pages and not 20 to 30. So what has this to do with technology? When you take these 20 to 30 pages and put this into the computer, there is no improvement here. Okay, so the complexity remains exactly the same. The same or a similar thing is for example, for the incoming tax in Austria. So the incoming tax is a quite complicated stuff. Of course, thanks to the e-government initiative here in Austria, you can do everything over the internet, but it still remains very complicated. It's not complex, but it's very complicated because the law situation here is in that way. And I believe that this, so technology cannot help in this respect. So there's almost no way out for solving these problems. So technology or the rules that come from different sources, like the government, legislation, organizational rules, business rules, and so on, are more or less one root cause of complexity. And I believe that technology itself is of little help in this respect. So we have to think about solving this problem by our own and then go back to the technology departments or information system departments in order to implement these business processes. So the second important issue is that technology itself causes complexity. I think Ron gave some examples. I will add one more. From software engineering, you all know that Microsoft, for example, when you have the operating systems and also the application software running, then from time to time there is a fault in there, and then okay, the blue screens are not longer available, but at least there is an email or an information sent to Microsoft, okay, exactly stating the problem in order to help Microsoft making the software better. And this is really a good idea. Unfortunately, when you look at the figures, you can expect several thousand, even not 100,000 and more, million maybe, of such messages a day coming to Microsoft, and more of them, or almost all of them, belong to issues that happened already before. So what you have to do is, when you are at Microsoft, you have to classify all these bug reports, put them into a database, sort them, distribute them among the developers in order to repair all these faults, finally. Okay, so this is really a complex task. The good thing is, of course, that there are some solutions to this problem, again, technological solutions, but it is not that easy. The same happens, for example, is not only Microsoft, Netscape, for example, or Firefox, or so they have similar means for getting information about bugs and then trying to, let's say, reduce the information to something that is manageable. So let's say to conclude the first round, so technology causes a lot of complexity, unfortunately, and on the other side, we are also implementing complex rules and not avoiding the complexity that is in there. Okay.
Thank you, Franz.
Welcome.
Now let's have some remarks and questions from the audience on this complexity side before we move into simplicity, which will solve every problem under the sun, of course. So who has a remark on observation, suggestion, question on what we discussed? Yes, please.
Short one. Where are the numbers from? The numbers you mentioned, how much time is spent for searching and all this.
From Isabella?
The researches have been done ever since 2007 on a larger scale, mostly in the US. You will find information with Accenture, information builders, and BASICs. If you cannot find them, please make sure to contact me. I can give you the citation.
So that's an official study. I mean, this
yes,
is not,
and it's a large scale.
This is not just counting in Isabella's company what happens. It is a broad scale type of study.
Yes.
Yeah? Other questions or suggestions? Yes, sir?
Hans Streusser from Vienna. Just one simple or one question. Would you agree with the notion then in saying, in order to deal with complexity, I have two possibilities, to increase my own complexity or to decrease the complexity of the environment? I wonder that I haven't heard this thinking up to now, or maybe am I totally wrong with that?
Now this is, you know, a difficult question, so I'll give it straight to Ron.
So what you're saying is I could decrease the complexity I'm dealing with, or decrease my own complexity?
Maybe first you have to say, it's a systemic view. I'm always talking about my system, myself, or my company, or my institution, and the outside world. Mm-hmm. And there's this law in cybernetics that the complexity between the two is always equalizing itself. So having, and we are talking about that, the environment is the complexity of the environment is increasing, and how can we deal with that? I have, so to say, two possibilities. I have to decrease, from my point of view, from my system, the complexity outside there. For example, very simple example is market research. 100,000 of customers out there, but by doing market research, I'm decreasing the complexity out there because I'm, for example, classifying in customer groups or whatever. Or I could, and so on. I don't want to get into that too much.
It's already a little bit an answer, of course, towards how to create simplicity, I guess, which is the second theme of today. One thing is for sure, I've seen some companies that said there is a huge complexity outside our company, and we might, you know, simply consciously decide to unplug from some of these complexity sources. Personally, I'm not so convinced of the success of such a strategy because it's a very complex world around us, which is providing us more and more triggers. And it's very tempting, by the way, to simply unplug every now and then, also as a person, by the way, from all of that, and simply say, I'm not part of this, which as a person you can make easily, that decision. And many people are, you know, famous for it and actually do that. As an organization, probably if you can, you know, permit yourself to do that, it might work as well. Pierre has been talking about digital enterprise, and there is some research we've been doing with MIT around what we call digital transformation. And they're also finding that there are different types of companies and the way they deal with innovation of technology around them. There is a group that are very trigger happy. So they embrace all of the new technologies as soon as they can. They have a radar screen for it. They are trigger happy people that embrace these technologies, and we sometimes call these the fashionistas, because they, you know, they like the fashion of new technology and are able and ready to embrace all of the potential complexity that comes with it. But there's also a set of companies that are much better in what we call transformation. So they have a very mature and well-established governance structure. They have top-down leadership, they have a vision, they know how to change, but they don't necessarily quickly embrace new technologies and advances in information technology. And we sometimes call these the conservatives, but conservatives, I guess, in a healthy way, because our research shown that they are usually more profitable in terms of, you know, creating profit for a company than the fashionistas that might be very good in creating additional revenue, so growth. Growth is obviously there in the complexity of the surrounding world. But if you hide away a little bit from that and don't try to embrace that too much, it's interesting because you won't create growth probably, because growth is also always somewhere new there. But on the other hand, you might be extremely profitable. So you might be very stable and quite valued as a company that knows how to, you know, stay profitable in a world of complete change.
But the net of it in my book, and I'm not sure if I understood the point very well, but in my book, the net of it is that, you know, we are used to deal with complexity within the boundaries of a company. And one of the main impacts of the digital enterprise is that these boundaries either disappear or become so porous that any illusion to have the complexity from the outside stop at the borders of the company, that would be the wrong expectation. Therefore, the complexity is bound to increase. Of course, it is triggered by technology at some stage, but it goes well beyond technology in terms of its impact and the way it manifests itself. Isabella, you wanted to say?
I want to come back to the systemic question part that you asked. I think if complexity and numbers increase and are becoming overwhelming, that's what we see with information today, we have less of a filing problem than more of a filter problem, which means when it becomes more and more, we have to start creating relevance. We have to start making a prioritization of what is the most relevant, because you cannot deal with it all, so you have to filter to the most relevant and then break it down. That's what I would say would be an approach that could be useful.
Very good.
Yeah.
Another question, yes, sir.
Gunther Hampel, my name, company ERCO. What I miss a little bit in this discussion is something like how do we reduce complexity? How are we going to break this stuff? The whole discussion is very superficial. It's a superficial discussion, like having all these different, let's say, web platforms like Facebook and whatever. Yeah, if you switch it simply off, nothing happens. What do you think about radical solutions like company Atos, for instance? They said they would like to abolish the email completely. Yes. Because actually, when I want to write down what is the content of this discussion here, it's everything and nothing. Yeah, it's complex. Yeah, we have to reduce. We have to set priorities. This we keep doing for the last 100 years. I mean, is there a kind of radical approach in something?
Well, I
could
think
really change the thing, because it's more of the same.
I think you are introducing the second half of our discussion, which is precisely, you know, how can we use technology in order to simplify, and what are the main technology developments which contribute to that? So, Ron, why don't you start it off?
I'll do it in a few minutes in order to have enough time left for discussion. But you're very right, of course. What are the strategies that we can follow to actually simplify what we're doing? Which often means, by the way, and it's already noted a few times, which doesn't mean that we're paving the cow path. So we shouldn't be looking at the old path that the cows always have been following hundreds of years, and now we have something new. We want to pave it and think it's faster, but it's still the old path, right? And we can do all sorts of innovative things to it. It's still the same old path that we're trying to pave, and it doesn't help us to be any more different. So the question over here is, how can we, you know, leave ourselves a little bit behind in finding some of these solutions? I think if we look at technology, one of the most successful technologies is, of course, as I said, it's often a cat and mouse game. If we look at something like Google Glass, it's also a very nice example of what technology might become, something almost completely invisible. I believe the end state of many successful innovations is that they become invisible. And if we have glasses, we don't even realize that we're wearing them. Maybe they become contact lenses soon, by the way. But we don't even realize that we're wearing or using technology. It's simply adapting itself very silently, very modestly to whatever we need at that moment in time. It might enhance us, augment our vision of reality, to simplify things. Because we don't need to sort out things, we don't need to pay too much attention to details that we don't want to pay attention to. So technology that becomes truly embedded in whatever we're doing, it becomes ubiquitous to what we're doing, becomes invisible, then it's suddenly something that would help us tremendously to simplify things, because it gives us a contextual addition to whatever our needs are. So although this might be a very confusing source of technology for a few years to come, eventually I believe that these types of technologies will help us to augment our perspective on reality and simplify the way we deal with reality. Then there's, of course, big data. I'm quite sure we'll be back on the topic in a few minutes. But of course, in this sea of information, and we all know it's there, and we all know that we cannot hide away from it, there's, of course, quite advanced analytics and embedded intelligence that can help us to only isolate that type of information that we really need. So in this sea of information, that is all promising, including email, by the way, a whole set of different impulses that come on to us on a minute-by-minute basis. Technology could help us to filter out what is really important for us. Learning, of course, from our own behavior. Predictive analytics that can help us to completely cut away some of the intermediates in the supply chain. Real-time analytics help us to make decisions. that we used to make on a month-by-month basis, assembling a lot of people, waiting for all sorts of precious information. So if we apply big data right, it doesn't become big data anymore. It's actually tiny data if you think about it. It's only these small pieces of information that we actually need to make solid decisions, and it simplifies life if we do it the right way. And this might certainly help also to deal a little bit with all the information overflow we get from all sorts of social sources. What is particularly right now happening in the big data community is that they're saying away with big data scientists, away with analytics, away with analyzing the information. What's much more important is visualizing information. So nowadays the emphasis on what they call data artists is quickly growing. People that are actually able to use stuff like infographics and all of the other sorts of more juicy, compelling ways of presenting information so that we can engage with it, so that we can sympathize with the storyline that's behind the data. So it's literally what people are saying right now in big data, is away with the data science and let's have the data art to replace parts of it, because it will make life more simple. Then, of course, and we've been discussing government, and particularly UK government already this morning. To my experience, the UK government is surprisingly innovative in their way of applying technology. And one of the guys that has been particularly instrumental in the past few years is Mike Bracken. He is the head of the government digital services in terms of its, let's say, design to the outside world. So here we're taking a design perspective. We saw it already yesterday. Design thinking is quickly becoming more important. Why don't you design from the outside in perspective, the way that you bring information to the outside world and that you engage with the outside world and see it as a product, something that you experience from the outside in? And why don't you design it like that? And what Bracken has done, and he is even nominated for Design of the Year within a big design contest, which didn't have to do with IT, but design in general. But he has designed a few remarkably simple things. For example, this is typically what the website of gov.uk, the government website, looks like. It's only, black on white, very simple. What are you? What do you need to do? And they guide you in a few very simple steps, without menus, without anything around it. In a few very simple steps, black on white, they guide you to what you need to do. And if you know gov.uk, you will see that the entire set of websites is redesigned to fit this particular design philosophy to simplification. Who are you? What do you want to get done? We'll get you there as soon as possible without any hassle of technology around it. And you can imagine that this would be very suitable to very quickly also be used by other type of communication channels. You only want to know what you want to do, what you want to achieve, where to go, and it brings you there in the shortest way without any technology that sort of distracts you. So utter simplification seems to be just simple, plain fonts on a white background, and that's what you win a design prize with, actually. So it's quite a breakthrough. And then finally, of course, there's again, here we have these guys again, the cloud, of course, could complexify our life quite a lot, but also, of course, can simplify it a lot. Because, as I just said, the final destination of many technologies is that become invisible. And what the cloud brings often, if we do it right, is exactly that. It first of all makes our infrastructure invisible. So it renders away our data centers, they disappear to the internet. And if we need something from a data center, we get it through our web browser, literally, through the internet. So it makes our data centers go away sooner or later. But it also will make sooner or later a lot of our applications, our solutions go away that we used to build and manage at the enterprise level. And we need to appreciate that it's a catalog-based world. It's a world in which you have a catalog of retail-based solutions, literally. So I believe that going to the retail side will help us a lot in the IT world, in the enterprise IT world, to look at a much simpler way at these solutions. It's much like I often compare it to working on IKEA. If you appreciate the IKEA business model, which is high quality, low price, well-designed stuff, right? But you acknowledge that it's in a catalog. So you're not going to IKEA, I've designed my ideal furniture, now let's see what IKEA has. You don't work like that. You work from the catalog. It's the art of the possible. It's an inspiration with simple, basic, highly standardized vanilla solutions. You choose them like you would do from a retailer, and you implement it in a highly standardized way, creating a foundation which is very simple, stable, does not need to be managed because they're retail standard products. So it gives you, as an IT director, an enormous amount of free space to do some of the more fancy things hopefully also simple on top of it. So retail thinking that is being brought through us by the clouds, catalog-based thinking, a highly standardized way of thinking will also help us, I think, to simplify a few of these things. So,
thank you, Ron.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Isabella, tell us how you see that and how it gives hope for your company.
Yes, so the doctor comes with a cure. You've observed that we first put the drama in and to say that the patient has been talking the last 20 years about the best diet to have and about the best strategy, how to lose weight and how to become healthy. And you know, the innovation happens when we stop talking and start bringing it to the ground and start doing things like Peter Drucker used to say as well, just do it. So here's the therapy. And once we stop talking today, we go out to the company and implement it. That's probably why I stand here, because we managed to actually do this one. And that's what information science looks like when you go out to your company. So what do you have to do? You have to do basically two things. The one deals with the people. You have to prioritize. I said this just earlier. You have to get your message right. What is the key message that you say to your people, to your staff? What is the key message to the client? What does your system do? You are the CIO. What does the IT strategy do for the business unit? Can you explain it? Does the CEO, I mean, in my case, okay, I understand myself quite well, but what does the CEO understand from your message? Does he understand your message, or is he just too stupid? Or is the user too stupid, or the client? So we have to get the message right. It's our responsibility. So the professional has his task to have the complexity of his profession in mind and to not bother the audience with the complexity of his profession. It is his prior task to make himself understood with the message that his profession delivers to whichever audience he has. So what is the one sentence that you say about your project, your company, and so on? And this has been spoken about also the last 20 years. We have discussed the issue of information overload and organizing it for years. We search 10 to 15% of our daily time the last 20 years. How come? Because we have just talked. No, we didn't just talk. We improved the systems in speed and in storage capacity. We escalated it. But how come? Unchanged search times in the company? Why? We escalated information at the same time, so we didn't win anything. Basics, the company that I mentioned that did the study, they named the study at the end when they were finished with the research. They said, we have found the enemy. He is us. There you go. The best system won't deliver your excellence. So it leads me to the second part. What does the technology do? With the technology, you have to be utterly strategic. And when you have your strategy, you make sure that it arrives in the daily work, in the process, how we do the things every day. The best strategies are 40 pages in a drawer or on the website. It doesn't do anything for you as long as we talk about it. So how do you implement it in a daily life? We need to go semantic. We need to actually add context to what we do. We need to make sense. We've talked about this as well. You're very right. When do we start doing it? We can. It's not a matter that we can't. It's there. We can. We just have to start doing it. So, and now you maybe ask the doctor who comes with the therapy and said, what is this one pill that I'm going to take? What is this one system that just like the suitcase opens up and we roll out this beautiful system? Well, there is not this one aspirin that cures it all. You know, you will have to design it, and you will have to design it to the needs of the company that you're working with. You have to focus what is the needs, and then you design. And then you need the people who are able to design, and then they will design it on their green table all alone in their chamber. and the rest of the business units will be very impressed rolling it out. No, they won't. So also here we have to start working together with the business units and understand what is their needs. So this one cure is what is the best therapy for the patient, so we can decide if we choke or if we breathe. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Isabella. Now let's see your contribution to simplicity, Franz.
Okay, so I will give you 2 examples where technology makes really a difference nowadays, and I'm sure much more in the future. Both of these examples come from software engineering and artificial intelligence. One is now learning, machine learning, for example. So machine learning is an old technique. We mentioned also big data. I'm not sure whether big data is really new, I have to say. So all the programs, for example, programs we have, they have millions of lines of code 10 years ago. So it's basically really big data there. And the nice thing is that machine learning can be used, for example, to improve software engineering or programming in general. One thing, for example, is to make use of the information that is stored in bug databases or in databases that are used during development. And what you can do there is, for example, to extract some information and then use machine learning to map this information. Basically, that's programming metrics, information about the structure of the system and so on, to map this automatically to the number of post-release bugs you had. And then you can use this function that comes out from this learning process and assign risk to the new programs you're going to write. You may think that this is some idea never experienced so far, but I have to say Microsoft is using that in their process at the moment in order to really assign the risk to the modules of their software and to use the information they gained before. So machine learning here helps not only in this respect, it also helps, for example, for pinpointing critical software, for helping them assigning more tests to the most critical parts of the system and so on. So machine learning is one of the success stories. Machine learning is not only used here in software engineering, but there is also a very nice example where information can be gained from the World Wide Web directly. So there is an approach by Mitchell from CMU, and he started a project called Never-Ending Language Learning, where the idea was to imitate more or less a child in software using machine learning techniques, giving web pages to the software and extracting information from these web pages. In the web pages, for example, what is the nice information that should be extracted is like relationships between a glass for storing water, for example, or liquids in general, the liquids, the conditions there, whether they're in the glass or on the floor or whatever. So all these relationships we know know by ourselves in order to solve problems they wanted to extract from the web, and they are quite successful in this respect. So you might search for NELL, which is the Never-Ending Learning Language Learning Project. And this shows that learning activities can reduce complexity, because before that it was very hard to come up with knowledge bases, big knowledge bases. So designing them is a very tough job, and using machine learning for this improves, let's say, gaining this information that is necessary for other purposes a lot. So this is one example where technology helps substantially. Another one is adaptive systems. So in software engineering, there's always the problem to get things right. So when you have a look at the typical number of faults in software, you have about between 1 and 500 bugs per 10,000 lines of code, which is a big number, a huge number. which means that for operating system you have thousands of bugs in there. And here the question is, how to deal with this problem. So we know that software is buggy. When software is used for controlling, for example, power plants or even more dangerous nuclear power plants and so on, we still know that this is a very risky thing. And for this purpose, usually monitors are used. So pieces of software that monitor the state, and then of course if some critical situation comes up, then shut down the system. Unfortunately, shutting down a system is is very much expensive, and for this purpose, self-adaptation comes into the game. And there are many examples. So we are using this, for example, for reconfiguring a robot during carrying out tasks, for example. So we are able, if a robot detects a hardware fault, a software fault, or even some misinterpretation of the sensor information, is able to adapt to this situation. So what is the advantage? The advantage is that you do not need really to consider all the cases a system should interact with the environment, but instead giving information of or when reaching a critical condition and how to react on this critical condition. And thus makes programming really a much more simple task, even for very complex system interacting in a changing environment. So these are basically two examples where technology helps a lot.
Thank you, Franz, for this. That shows technology being able to control and simplify itself. Now let's have a couple of questions before I will close this panel. Yes, sir, please. Yeah.
I'm Peter Hoffman from Evolta, Evolving Executive Careers. We are a small management and leadership consultancy here in Vienna. And to prepare you all for the statement that will come a little bit later, let me start by saying that what I really appreciate about this session is the fact that the two phenomena of simplicity and complexity were juxtaposed very clearly, so that we really sensed the polarity between those two. Now, and my statement now is probably taking us beyond this session, right into the overall event, so perhaps back a little bit. And the question that rose in my mind during what we heard was, interestingly enough, there has been, and it's been so clear in this session as it has not been in any other session for me, why are we so negative about complexity? What I perceived was that complexity is bad, simplicity is nice, is good. So for God's sake, please give us back simplicity. Now, my suggestion would be, is it possible perhaps to change the whole thing and find a positive aspect about complexity and then bathe in it, same way as Dagobert Duck did in his money vault? Thank you.
Thank you for your, this is more kind of a statement than a question, because you suggest that one reverses a little bit the way we think about that.
Excuse me.
Yeah. Yes, sure.
I would appreciate if the panel...
Yes, that was exactly my intention, is to ask each of the panelists to give a 23-second answer to this complex question. So, Franz, do you want to start?
Okay, yeah, very interesting question. So, what I would answer here, so we saw this nice movie of the birds and the swarms, okay? So this seems to be a complex system, but indeed there is a simplicity in there. So the rules that are working there in swarms usually are really not that complicated. So the complication or the complexity emerges then from the interaction between system parts. So of course, as a scientist, I'm interested in getting the simple answer to, let's say, how to explain a difficult, complex problem. But in my view, most of the answers are not so complex anymore. This is maybe not an answer to a question, but a statement here.
Isabella?
Thank you very much for that comment. I tried to point at it in the second part of my talk, that basically complexity isn't bad, it's just the way how we manage it. And if we have the professionals actually dealing with the complexity of their topic or profession, and then delivering, so to speak, an understandable and like a compliant result, then it would be fine. And this is exactly what we have the professionals for. They need to understand their complexity. We won't understand nuclear physics, and the nuclear physicist will likely not understand our communication system. So that's why we have to work together to create organisms that will eventually still function if everybody minds his own complexity well.
Very good. Ron?
I like the statement a lot, actually. I believe there's a tremendous value in complexity. And as I said, you can unplug from the world and have a very simple life, which is fine. But the reality is that there is a huge complexity around us. And if we're able, guided and driven by technology, to dive right into that complexity and get all of the positive energy out of it that we could never uncover before, there's actually a huge value in it. And I do believe that technology can help us to thrive on that. You could call that simplicity, but maybe it's just a matter of embracing complexity. I like the statement a lot. There's a lot good to be found there.
Yes, yes, sir. Lucas, you were first, yeah? Just one.
Lucas Michel, Sphere Advisors, Switzerland. This session sails under the umbrella of resilient organizations. And I'd like to understand what the panelists recommend I would do in order to make my organization more resilient, in order to cope with complexity.
We carefully avoided the term resilience, although it was somewhere in the program, because it's a term which necessitates quite a bit of discussion in itself. Mm-hmm. Any views on this point? What makes organizations more resilient in this complexity world?
I can add something to it. First of all, I believe it's a black swan world, right? I guess most of us know the black swan theory. So unexpected things happen that we cannot forecast and not predict because they're black swans. So we don't see them coming. So how can we be resilient as a company to deal with that? Is first of all to have the tools and the means to detect black swans as they occur. So be able to very delicately follow the events as they unfold around us and be able to detect the ones that we need to act on. And then secondly, we need an agile organization that is actually able to do something once we have detected such a black swan. And I believe in both cases technology will help us a lot to become more resilient. It's not resilient as we know it. It's not hiding behind our walls, hiding behind our firewalls or whatever and think we have an illusion of safety. Instead, we would be full confidence that we're able to thrive in a world full of unpredicted events and be driven a little bit by technology to deal with that. That would be my definition of resilience.
Yeah, you were the first. I'm sorry, just. Yeah.
First, I have to apologize that I made my comment too quickly because the second part was very much illustrating what one can do. I disagree with that, what you said. Complexity is nice, but I think there should be a choice. If I want complexity, then I can play chess or I can do some investigation and some research. But if I just would like to have a tool to have things done, yeah, then I use something like an app, for instance. When we look at the software industry, how they develop with Windows and then later with the big step with an app where you just press a button and something is happening in the background. And now you see that many programs suddenly are very, very easy to serve and to use. Suddenly it's possible. In the past there was a kind of hidden knowledge which almost a kind of arrogance of the IT guys because they know how to do it, how to do all this stuff. And now the thing is really something which is in a very democratic way everybody can use, even my grandmother. Mm-hmm. And my question is now, do you think that there is a kind of appification as well for information, that we reduce it in a way that we have an app, we say, okay, this is what I want, now I just would like to know something, I would like to book a hotel or whatever, and, but I don't need all the other information around, to switch off everything what is not necessary.
I think, let me answer this one. I think this is precisely the objective of the various techniques and, which have been described and examples which have been given. And for me, the best illustration of that is what happens in the retail industry, where on one hand you have extremely complicated systems to draw out of humongous masses of data some top executive decision-making information. But maybe the more relevant example, and the one which illustrates your point, is the information I get if I'm filling the shelves in the store with the goods, and I'm going to know what worked yesterday, and therefore where I need to put this particular product on the shelves. That's then, from the lots of information leading to that, what is being extracted is put this kind of rice or washing powder, whatever, on the second level of the shelf, because this is where customers will look for it. That, in my mind, this is the utmost in drawing out, through technology, what is truly useful to the operation and decision-making of the company. You had a question, sir.
Florian Kondert from the Zukunftsinstitut here in Austria. And I'm not sure if I'll put it as a question, a comment, or a suggestion, but the black swan has been mentioned now for 2 times, and probably there's an approach to discuss this as a misunderstanding, since we're saying how to make organizations resilient through ICT. While I'm thinking we're having a misunderstanding in the sense that on the one hand we're trying to put these knowledge workers, since we're here at the Drucker Forum, on a more autonomous position within organizations, but on the other hand don't deliver the systems, the IT systems, to let them work as if it would be their system. Recently I was reading a nice article where of course design was discussed, so that was another point that's pretty important for me as well. And that kind of course design should be probably as flexible and as diverse in organizations that all these knowledge workers in future and also today really have the opportunity to work as an expert, not as a machine that puts in information. Because information is cheap, but meaning is what's really expensive and really necessary for future.
Well, I think, you mentioned the human element. I think Ron had a good example that companies are now relying on data artists to make the most out of data, using systems, obviously, which is necessary to put together, to structure, to analyze, but then giving the ultimate meaning through a extremely human connection, in that case, some kind of art form representing data. So I think it's a good example of what one needs to put in front of these systems in order to make them truly useful for human operators. I need to bring that session to a close, and I'd like to do it in the following way. It seems to me that when one remembers what top executives or executives in a company should be, they should, give sense to what happens. They should provide direction. They should communicate. So they have an information processing and sense-making role, which has always been the case within companies. Nothing new under that sun. And that, in effect, I think we saw clearly in the discussion that technology is bringing tools which can destroy sense, because one can, drown everything under pretty useless stuff, etc., or which are sense-making. For example, a catalog of services. For example, a process which is no longer a rigidly hardwired process which one has to go through irrespective of the circumstances, or the intelligence which is to be found in data. And in a sense, to manage the digital enterprise well, the leadership, the executives, will have to find within technology what is contributing to sense-making, to the proper communication, to the proper intelligence of the organization. And therefore, you will continue to see well-managed digital enterprises, the one where the top management is able to continue to play their role of sense-making in a very different setup, and then organizations which are less well-managed. These differences will no doubt remain. So I'd like to thank our panelists, Isabella, Ron, and Franz, and thank you very much for your participation. And now is the time for the lunch. Thank you very much.